Howdy, I'm Bob, or Grinning Brutus if you prefer. There exists a bifurcation in all perceptions of reality that must be addressed before anything else. The impact of nth-order effects demands it. Reality is either found or it is made. It is discovered or it is constructed. There is no third option. There is no compromise. There is only the zero-sum game that must be played to the end. Here's an example. Person A slaps person B. Either an open-handed slap to the face is objectively performed, or it is not, and may vary depending on the subjective state of one or both actors. Objectively, did this take place, or can one subjectively will it away? Zooming out brings us to the master variable of human cognition, which is to say, correspondence. We operate as though representations must necessarily correspond to a mind-independent reality. This is common sense when done colloquially. When made more rigorous and systematic, it becomes a realist framework. An anti-realist framework, by comparison, operates as though truth is constructed and tethered only to the frame itself. This is the bedrock that supports how I examine the logical structures in our civilization. That examination is the whole point of these videos. Government is applied metaphysics. Fighting over downstream issues is mostly useless, as far as I can tell. What is real, what isn't, and what can be extrapolated, that is what I care about the most. So this brings us to realist category errors that I want to address. Consider the thinkers who attempt to split the difference, like Immanuel Kant. Kant claimed objective reality exists, but we never reach it as it is in itself. He called it the Ding an sich. Germans. Am I right? We only get appearances filtered through categories the mind supplies. That is a massive category error. It functionally seals off objective reality from human detection. It leaves us operating exactly as if objective reality does not exist at all. And it inadvertently hands the keys of the institutions directly to the anti-realists. Then you have someone like Karl Marx. He described himself as a dialectical materialist. But look into his work. He advocated for the raising of consciousness into a species being to overcome the human being all across the globe simultaneously. He is attempting to change us into one while claiming that is what we already are. The best part is that the dialectic itself is inherently illogical, so much so that a whole movement called analytical Marxism spent 2 decades trying to fix it and failed. It's hilarious, as far as I'm concerned. And it is exactly why you can't argue with a Marxist more often than not, as they see value in contradiction. That illogical dialectical foundation is what trickles down into Marxism's children. Critical theory, critical legal studies, critical race theory, queer theory, feminist theory, etc. Which brings us to the Law of Non-Contradiction, applied to reality itself. The law dictates that a thing cannot both be and not be the same thing at the same time. Therefore, there's no such thing as domain splitting when it comes to reality. No, you cannot have your little pocket of anti-realism. You cannot claim that physics is objective, but morality is subjective, because morality is part of the set of reality. If someone argues that reality is both objective and subjective, depending on the domain, they have already conceded the game, zero-sum though it may be. They are really arguing that reality is subjective and are just haggling over degree and preference. Anti-realism metastasizes over time. It eventually takes over the entirety of the domain in question, be it an institution, a country, or a mind's understanding of reality itself. It is strictly one or the other. Choose wisely. To see this metastasis in action, look at Harvard University. Harvard was founded in 1636 with an explicit realist purpose. The main end of a student's life and studies is to know God and Jesus Christ. The original motto was Veritas Christo et Ecclesiae. Truth for Christ and the Church. The original seal visualized this metaphysical limit perfectly. 2 books faced up, 1 faced down. It represented a physical anchor. Human reason has hard limits, and revelation completes what reason cannot reach. By the 20th century, the motto was truncated to simply Veritas, truth. On the modern seal, all 3 books are face up. The limit is gone. No revelation. It represents pure rationalism detached from any grounding, a slow, total, institutional takeover operating entirely underneath the public prestige of the name. Isn't that signaling insanely interesting? And insane? Why does removing that limit matter? Because a realist framework has a hard ceiling. Reality itself. When a realist falls, the world provides feedback, and he fixes the map because the territory is king. The anti-realist recognizes no mind-independent reality. They have no limiting principle. Nothing tells the anti-realist that they can't eat their cake and have it too. Tell the anti-realist that we have to build a tower to get to heaven, and they will start gathering bricks, not because they are unintelligent, but because reality does not tether them. They are psychologically boundless. They see limitations as something to overcome. And when they start running out of bricks, they start stacking bodies. This inherent lack of limits explains why anti-realist frameworks tend to posit utopias and breed what people call extremism, quote unquote, at the fringes. There's no objective floor to tell them that they have gone too far. Anti-realist frameworks tend only to follow their premises to a certain point that is comfortable to them, rather than to their logical conclusions. The distance between where a framework stops and where it logically concludes is the shadow metaphysics, my term. It will always manifest over time because a new generation will be less likely to maintain your arbitrary stopping point. Note that this means there is no such thing as quote-unquote extremism. It is merely a movement's shadow metaphysics coming into the light. For example, gay rights, quote-unquote, led to the queer theory movement. Both are Marxist political movements. The first sustained gay rights organization in the United States, the Mattachine Society, founded in 1950, was explicitly founded on Marxist principles by Harry Hay, a former member of the Communist Party USA. After the Stonewall riots in 1969, the Gay Liberation Front emerged. It rejected the assimilationist goals of the earlier movement in favor of a revolutionary agenda deeply influenced by the New Left and Marxism. Now we have gay people pushing back against things like Drag Queen Story Hour. Unfortunately, anti-realism doesn't stop when you want it to. It stops when it is made to stop. This explains exactly why Harvard fell. Holding a realist framework requires continuous active effort to keep representations firmly anchored to reality. Releasing a framework from reality's restrictions costs absolutely nothing. Because of this burden asymmetry without active defense, my term, anti-realism naturally spreads and metastasizes within and across institutions like a virus. Left on autopilot, the default direction of drift is always toward anti-realism, even if some people inside the institution oppose this policy or that. Note that active defense is my term as well. It has not been seen in any institution just yet. Active defense means the explicit, sustained, and absolutely uncompromising defense of objective reality in itself as a metaphysic. It would require an explicit understanding of realism and anti-realism as metaphysics. This is something different from merely defending an institution's positions or traditions. This is a difficult pill to swallow because we are raised to believe that compromise is a moral good. It's the polite thing to do. That is a sentimentality trap, the ethics of the playground. In my old age, I've run low on sentimentality, and I seek to play no longer. Reality does not compromise. If you say the sky is blue, and an anti-realist says the sky is pink, the answer isn't in the middle. You don't split the difference with a delusion. The other side is simply wrong. Compromise is dialectical logic in action. In an inter-framework clash, compromise always costs reality and benefits anti-realism. It is a one-way ratchet that continually drags the baseline away from objective reality. Have you seen any ratchet effects in your life? The ratchet of conservatism, perhaps? Dialectical logic asserts that contradictions are real, that opposing forces exist simultaneously within every object and process. It claims those contradictions drive development, and that change occurs when they intensify and resolve into a new state, which then contains its own new contradictions. In other words, it seeks out contradictions as the only things that are true because the contradiction must be resolved. It becomes resolved because it is an unstable process. Becoming. It literally opposes all that exists or being. So, what do you do with all of this? Well, you go and you look at your own foundation. You learn to stop assuming that the people around you have the same framework as you. This is admittedly easier for me because no one is yet familiar with the framework that I am building out. A person who can finally see his framework as a framework becomes the one in the room who can defend what he loves at the level where it's actually under attack. The thing you must not forget is this. Even if your framework is one amongst many, if your framework is anchored to reality, it is definitionally more correct than those that aren't. Stop engaging in pointless arguments and start to ask, is this true? So, here's the last question that you must answer for yourself. Now that you can see the fork, which one are you going to be? Realist or anti-realist? Objective reality or subjective reality? I know which one I'm choosing.